New year, new credit scores. Chime makes it easier to build credit by using your own money to make on-time payments with a secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Use it everywhere Visa credit cards are accepted. To apply, just open a Chime checking account with a qualifying direct deposit. There's no annual fee or credit check required when applying. Get started at chime.com/build. That's chime.com/build. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Late payment may negatively impact your credit score. Results may vary.
One of the last things we said was, I will never stop fighting for you, honey. And he's like, I love you more than I've ever loved anybody, but I can't keep ruining our lives.
Welcome to the I Did Not Sign Up for This podcast, a weekly show dedicated to highlighting the incredible stories of everyday people. No topic is off limits. Join me as we explore the lives and experiences of guests through thought-provoking, unscripted conversations. And if you enjoy this show and would like to support this podcast, consider joining my Patreon. You'll gain instant access to over 70 exclusive bonus episodes, entries into giveaways, a discount on merch, and more. Your support allows me to continue bringing you these important stories. So head over to patreon.com/I did not sign up for this and become part of the community. I'm your host, Carling, a Canadian queer-identifying 30-something-year-old, providing a platform for the stories that need to be heard. All right. Hello, Melissa.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing all right. Trying not to sweat everything that I'm drinking right now. It's so hot here.
Is it so hot?
Yes, the humidity is like 1,000%.
Yeah. Oh, well. It's not snowing, so I guess that's nice. Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm so excited to chat with you. I've been really looking forward to today, even though we're talking about some pretty serious stuff. So I would love it if we just dive right in. If you can introduce yourself, tell me who you are, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll find where your story starts.
Sure. So my name is Melissa, and I currently live in sort of Western Virginia. I relocated from Southern Maryland to be closer to my parents for this time in our lives. I am a mom to 4. My stepson is 16, and then I have an 11-year-old son, an 8-year-old son, and a 3-year-old daughter. And yeah, we're just doing life now. The 3 kids live with me. My stepson is with his grandparents right now. And what do I do? I'm a mom right now. I
would say like survive.
Yeah, exactly. I've been in the ed tech world for many years. I had a job that I absolutely loved as a software trainer and implementer. I was laid off in November just due to cuts. They bought companies and had redundancy. They let a lot of us go. And I just have not found anything since then. I was looking pretty hard, and then March came, and so I stopped. So now I'm just kind of with the kids, and then come fall, I'll try to find something part-time, maybe back in ed tech, maybe life is taking me somewhere else. We'll see.
Yeah. So your story, you sent me an email, and it kind of starts a long time ago, like when you were 3. So where do you feel like your story, where do you want to begin with your story?
I guess I don't know. I mean, there's so much to it, right? My story is one of a lot of loss. And I think while that is important, everybody comes to the table with certain things that they've gone through in their lives, right? Whether it's their parents got divorced or their favorite grandma died, you end up at this point in your life where you realize, okay, this isn't just like a fluke thing anymore. This is actually affecting my life on a day-to-day basis. And how do I look at that and then, move forward and help heal from it? So I mean, as like a brief overview, when I was 3, my caregiver, basically like my second mom, died suddenly, and nobody told me about it. There wasn't any conversation, which is sort of ironic now that my daughter is 3 and has lost her dad. So there's kind of this, what do I wish my parents had done differently? My mom and I have conversations about it all the time. So that wasn't talked about.
Was the theory that just like you were 3, you wouldn't understand?
Yes.
Yeah, like kids understand a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and I was 3 and 9 months, so I was almost 4. And the kicker of it was my brother had been born 2 weeks earlier. So I had gone from an only child to then sharing my mom. And then I lost basically my second mom because I'd been with her since I was 6 weeks old. She cared for me full time. So yeah, it was just, they didn't think that I would understand. And so it was just, we're going from Mrs. Hendrick's house and now we're going to be at this new lady's house. And thankfully, the family that my mom found was amazing. The mom, we're actually still in touch. She had 7 daughters and a son, and I was just another one of their kids. She welcomed
Oh,
me in,
wow.
and it was the best place for me. But yeah, just that open conversation just wasn't given to me. Just wasn't,
Yeah.
they didn't do it back then. So I don't hold any ill will towards my parents or anything. I know they did the best they could. My mom still saved the brochure from the memorial service because she thought that one day I might want it. And I did. I did want it. So,
Yeah.
40 years later, but it's okay.
Yeah. I really think like any age experiences loss, it might just show up differently or show up a little
Mhm.
bit later, but that's like a huge trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then growing up otherwise, was your life pretty typical? You said you lost grandparents.
Yeah, grandparents, but I did have triplet siblings that were born when I was 9. But as far as losing, I felt pretty lucky. I felt pretty lucky coming into adulthood. I was like, wow, loss isn't something that I've had to really go through. I've not lived a charmed life. Of course, we've all been through things, and being the eldest sibling of 5 kids, I didn't get exactly what I needed from my parents all the time, but we were well taken care of. My parents took me, put me in private school, and they were always just trying to be involved in our lives as much as they could be. So yeah, so I felt very untouched by real loss, by real grief for a long time, ironically enough. Yeah. So then when I was 18, I got pregnant unexpectedly and grappled with keeping him versus placing him for adoption. Abortion was not an option for me once my parents discovered. It was just a personal decision. I had definitely considered it. But for me, once my parents knew, I was like, well, I'm going to move forward with this one way or the other. So I ended up finding an amazing family and placing him for adoption. It's very open. He's known about it from the beginning. So kind of opposite of me when I was, 3, 4, that age. At 5, he's saying, I was in your tummy and you gave me to my real mommy. And, I grew in your belly and you were my first mommy. And so that conversation, even, then we just really wanted to change the dialogue about hard things that can be discussed and kids can understand it.
Yeah. And do you still have a relationship with that family today?
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, Kathy is like a sister to me. We actually were featured on Humans of New York. My story is on there, so you
Oh,
can
wow. I love them.
go back and link it or something. But yeah, Brandon did a two-parter on us. So yeah, we're very close. Aiden is so successful. I mean, this kid, he's 25 and he's buying houses and, renting them out. I mean, he graduated
Wow.
from Virginia Tech with a double major. Just so proud of him. He really is an amazing kid.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Wow.
been a good relationship. A lot of times she was the one who I could go to kind of get me recentered, if I was sort of lost in figuring out who I was. I was a kid. I really was at 18, just a baby setting out into the world. And
Yeah.
she would always just give me so much grace and love. No matter if I stopped calling for a couple months or if I came by every day, she just open arms. So,
Wow.
yeah. Guess the next thing was meeting my first husband, Ryan, and we met in 2005 and got married in 2007. She was a rock star, I guess, as they say, a local rock star. He played guitar and sang and did bass, and he and his buddies played locally for a number of years, just having a great time. It was always his dream to play music, and so he was able to do that and support the two of us. We moved to Nashville in 2010 because he wanted to be more in the music scene, and we kind of just wanted a change of pace from we lived outside DC. We were both born and raised there, and so we thought, oh, we're married. Let's go on an adventure. And both of us always kind of we're always trying to find ways out, out of
Yeah.
the Northern Virginia area. So we went to Nashville and things did not turn out how he expected musically. It was just, I guess it said he did a lot of cover stuff and Nashville is more original and it takes a while to get established. And I don't think that we had enough patience or savings in order to do that.
Mhm.
So he decided on his own to enlist in the Navy. And
Wow.
then he came to me and was like, okay, I'm going to enlist in the Navy and I can leave in 3 months or I can leave in 3 weeks for boot camp. And I said, all right, let's do it. And he's like, well, I'm going to go in 3 weeks. And I said, okay. So we did.
Wow. So you go from like a rock star's wife to a military wife.
A military
or a Navy
wife. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, we were getting close. We were like, we kind of want to start our family. And the idea was that I would stay home with the kids. That was always what he wanted for me and what I wanted for myself, at least for the first couple of years. And so he wanted to make sure that happened. So he enlisted and we were on the Navy journey for 6 years. We had our first son, Liam, in 2012 in Great Lakes. So we lived in Great Lakes for a year. We moved down to the coast of Virginia for a year. And then he was in school for a couple of years. And then we were moved out to San Diego, which was my favorite. It was like just the best place for me. I felt at home. I started a community and just found my tribe. So just found my mom group and really felt at home there. But then his ship got repositioned to Hawaii. So after a year and a couple months in San Diego, we found out we were moving to Honolulu. And I was pregnant with our second. It was about 9 weeks at that point. We had just found out.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And now you have to like pack up your whole life with a toddler.
And 2 dogs. And these
Oh,
dogs,
my gosh.
yeah, and they're little pugs. So for Hawaii, they have these really strict standards of they've never had a case of rabies. So you have to get these shots, spaced the right amount of time. And then they just have all this paperwork you have to do. But the dogs, since they were pugs, were moving in the summer and we couldn't put them under the plane. And they were my babies. They were like, they were my first kids. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So I got them as emotional support animals. I'm pregnant, not that pregnant, so it's not that big of a deal, but just tired, with the 2-year-old, the 2 dogs, and all the stuff that we could carry on the, that we could bring on the plane because we were going to be separated from our stuff for 3 months. So we got there, we got settled, and then Ryan had to fly back and then take the ship back. So it was another 2 or 3 weeks before we were all back together as a family. But I loved living there. It was an experience of a lifetime. I never would have been able to do that otherwise. The Navy moved us there, paid for everything, moving wise, to get us there. It was hot, especially in the summer, but we loved it. My pregnancy there was so wonderful. Like if I was ever feeling just, shad and just heavy, I would just go swim in the ocean and everything was buoyant and just lovely, like bath water. It was tough once Carter came because the newborn at the beach was a little tricky, but we had certain spots that we would go to and made sure that we always had our tents and, shade and lots of water.
Yeah.
But Ryan was a surfer and we really just tried to embrace that life. He struggled the whole time I knew him with drinking. And when I met him, he was a pothead, but that was, I guess alcohol was his drug of choice. So things kind of got to a point where I was like, it's too much for me. I feel like we are not progressing as a couple because we keep getting into these drunken arguments at night. And then the next day would be tense. And I just felt this heaviness throughout our relationship. And so I said, can we please go to counseling? And he agreed. And basically the counselor was like, I can't do anything until you get sober because this is such a big roadblock for your wife that this is something that you're going to have to either choose to do or not be in the marriage anymore. So he did get sober for a little bit and it seemed to get better. But during that time, I just was realizing how much sort of emotional abuse and he had like narcissistic tendencies. And I'm a caregiver. And so I just sort of took it on as like I deserved it. And it wasn't until I got into a group of other women where we were discussing things and I realized, oh, this isn't normal. Like I had moved 6,000 miles away from my family. So what a typical relationship, what a healthy relationship looked like, something that had become foreign to me. There's a lot of gaslighting and it's just a really confusing time, especially because I was drinking as well. So things would be kind of hazy of what actually happened. Why did we end up in that place? Why am I getting the silent treatment for 3 days, for something that I don't really remember saying? So it was a very difficult decision, but I ended the marriage. When we moved back from Hawaii to Virginia, he separated from the Navy. And I told him in March of 2017, I wanted a divorce. And he didn't take it very well. He said it was out of left field for him. And he kind of disappeared for a while. I didn't talk to him. He had started getting back into taking pills and just lots of drug use to try to ease the pain of what he was going through. But he ended up sort of getting things back together and started coming back around for the boys. He loved those boys more than anything, really. I mean, they were his reason for doing what he did, getting his head on straight and trying to provide a home for them to come visit and stay, and getting a job and just having more stability for them. So we did like joint custody for a while. And actually in COVID, he was able to take them for a week at a time versus just every other weekend because they were doing online school. So that last year, they got to spend so much time with him and his family, which I was really happy about. But yeah, he had a good, stable job, benefits, all that stuff. He met somebody, they got married, he bought a house. She has 2 kids, 2 daughters. So they kind of had this 2 girls and 2 boys, a little Brady bunch. And the kids got along so well because they're close in age.
And had you started dating at this point?
Yes. So I decided in summertime 2017, nothing serious. I would like to just kind of see what's out there. And I met a man on Bumble. Will was my first date that I went on. And when I sat down to dinner with him, I was like, this man is it. I've been looking for you. It was weird. I don't know how to explain it. It was just like, you're home. You are home. And I'm sure people will be like, oh, that's trauma. It's, trauma connection or whatever. But at the time, he just felt so familiar to me. And I still dated. I still went on other dates. We decided we were going to be friends because he wasn't in a place where he really was ready to date. He thought he was, but then he met me and was like, oh, I'm not actually ready to date about someone I care about. I just want to go out and have fun and have a good time. So we kind of did that separately while also talking on the phone every night, just kind of being best friends, being in each other's lives. So I did date a couple jerks, and he helped me kind of dig my way out of those and tell me, hey, he shouldn't be talking to you like that, or that's creepy. Or I would send him my location when I was on dates so that somebody knew where I was. And I did the same for him. The girls would say certain things because he was such a sucker for love. And so he would meet somebody and be like, I'm going to marry her. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not. No, look at her past. She said she didn't want to have kids. Why are you like, no, this isn't someone that you want to settle down with. So that went on for a while. And then actually in January of 2018, I moved into his basement because I could not afford the house that I was living in this super expensive area. So we were roommates, still just platonic, but getting closer, spending lots of time together. All of our kids got along, and so that was.
And did he just have the one kid?
Yeah, so he had full custody of his son Isaac. His mom's in West Virginia. She's got 2 other kids. Will was his primary caregiver from when he was 2. So it was.
Oh wow!
We had the 3 boys. Got a little crazy sometimes.
And then how do you go from roommates and best friends to marrying this guy?
Yeah, interesting. So, full disclosure, and he knew this too. I was in love with him the whole time. While I was okay trying to see if anything else is out there, in the back of my mind, we need to be together. And we would talk about it, and he would be honest and say, I don't think so. You're not my normal type. And then I would argue and say, yeah, maybe that's a good thing because all your other types break your heart and, leave you in a puddle on the floor. So we decided to move down to Southern Maryland to be closer to his family. He wanted like a bigger house, more land, and possibly be on the water. And so he said, okay, let's do it. So we found this place on the water and just moved down. And we were there maybe 2 weeks. And one night we're sitting outside on our dock. We have a boathouse and just this beautiful home. And he just looks at me and he said, I'm an idiot. I am absolutely in love with you. I've been in love with you since I met you. And I'm so sorry that it's taken me this long. And I said, it's okay, baby. I know.
I knew.
Yeah. It's funny when we called his mom. She was like, finally, man. Yeah. So then we just had a wonderful couple months. The kids would go to their dads and Isaac would go to his mom's. And so we'd have weekends to ourselves. And that was amazing because we actually kind of felt like we were dating. We'd go out to dinner without the kids. And so we were like family in the week, and then every other weekend we'd get to go play. And then Mother's Day 2019, I found out I was pregnant with our surprise daughter, which is unexpected. But that was kind of like, okay, this is where we need to be going. So he was at first like, I know I love you. I know I want to be with you, but is this going to last for a lifetime? Is this something that I want to sign up for? And then he said, as soon as he found out we were pregnant and had kind of acclimated to the idea of being a dad again, to a baby, that was it. He was signed up and we were ready to commit. Now, we did not actually get married. We were we used to joke and say if there was common law marriage, we would be husband and wife. We did wear rings, but he was waiting to kind of get his life into a better financial situation before we signed the piece of paper. But yeah, from then on, we just would refer to each other husband and wife. We welcomed our daughter in 2020, January of 2020, right before COVID. And then from then, it just kind of all fell apart. He was really a very outgoing, social person. We both worked remotely, and he had anyway, but he would go on site to customers. He'd go into the office, and all of a sudden that was gone. We couldn't even see his family, who we had moved down to the area to be near, and we just became this little bubble. He started working almost round the clock. His work had him he needed to do overnight tech support for this one company while also in the day doing his regular job. So he started taking too much of his ADD medication in order to do that. And then it just kind of spiraled and snowballed. Lack of sleep, lack of access to family, to friends. And then the medical care that we found, I just don't think they really got to the root of what was going on. They just were throwing medication at him. So it was it was a dark time. I was by myself a lot. He helped out with Emma significantly. I would say the worst of it started in 2021. So 2020 was a hard year, but we would tag team with the baby. We'd put her to sleep. We'd help out with the kids who were doing their online school. The boys would be going to their dads every other week. So we had some, amount of breathing room and connection time with each other. But 2021 was really when it came to a head. So in June of 2021, I got a phone call from Ryan's wife at 2 a.m. that she had found him dead. And she didn't know what had happened at that point. It was a complete surprise. Like, he had just talked to the boys 5 hours before and said goodnight.
So they were at your house, the boys?
They were at my house, yeah. Yeah, they were at my house. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with this information. And then when it hit me, I just collapsed. It was just my boys without their dad. I didn't know what I was going to do or tell them.
Yeah.
It was the day after summer had started. So their school had just ended. They were looking forward to going to Outer Banks with him and something they did every year. It was the day before Father's Day. So it was just, it was a hard weekend.
And how old were they at this point?
6 and 9.
How do you tell boys that old that their dads died?
Yeah, they were very confused. Will and I talked about it a lot. I talked with my parents, did some research, and basically we sat him down and just told him what happened. We didn't say how, because at that point we still didn't really know. I had assumed that he had probably taken something and had overdosed accidentally, but I didn't have enough information. So we just said, his heart stopped working. And my oldest was just like, what? I just got a text from him, a good night text from him. And there was just a lot of not understanding. And I think also being at our house when it happened versus being there, they were so separated from it. There's such a, their dad wasn't there. So the idea that he was gone was almost just the word I'm looking for. It was just like a thought. It wasn't really actually happening. So that was, my 6-year-old didn't get it really. I mean, he cried, but I don't think he really understood. But Liam and him, my older one, they were closer. I mean, he spent more time with him, because Ryan and I were together till he was 5. So he really had more of dad than Carter did. So I'd say at that point, it was probably the turning point, especially for Will. He loved the boys so much, and he was really their dad. I mean, he was their second dad. He did all the things that dads do and provided for them and loved on them and tucked them in and, picked them up from school and checking a baseball and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if it was just like a mental shift that happened where it was like all of a sudden I'm going from stepdad to now full-time father of 4 kids. And then on top of the stress from work, this is just my speculation, but that's really when it shifted. He ended up getting fired from his job. He just couldn't make meetings on time. He would work for days and then he would have to sleep for days because he was just so burnt out and exhausted.
Like they were the ones asking him
Mm-hmm.
to work overnight and then work in the day.
So yeah, so that had ended. That period was before, but he was already now in a horrible habit of, just working as much as he could until he crashed. And that's what he would do. And then he couldn't show up for the regular things that he was expected to show up for. He couldn't get by on just his, I'm going to get this project done. They needed him to have check-ins and he just couldn't do it. And I think that's sort of where things came apart because that was his identity for so long. We ended up deciding that he would go to rehab, even though we'd been sober at this point since 2019. We stopped drinking in March of 2019. And so he was going more for mental health. And we really wanted something that was trauma focused. So at this point, we realized there was things from his childhood that were playing into his mental health and kind of what had gone wrong there. And so we wanted something trauma focused, but it's almost impossible to find a rehab center that takes Medicaid that can focus on that, that is going to look at other modalities and not just the 12 steps. And they kind of just told us what we wanted to hear to get him there, I think, looking back.
And so did he complete a program once he was there?
He did. He went to the inpatient up in Pennsylvania. He did an outpatient IOP, and then he did leave that one early. So there's kind of like graduated steps down. And I really wanted him to come home and be able to do a program while also being at home. Because at this point, he's still up in Pennsylvania and New Jersey because they're all connected. All the centers have their spots that they send you to. And we just couldn't find one that was close enough to home that made sense. So he and his counselor agreed that he would come home and do online things and then go to AA and things like that. But when he got home, we did counseling, but that was it. Life with a family just kind of took priority. And neither of us were very good at putting ourselves first, and our own needs.
Yeah.
So I would say, maybe you should go to your meeting. And he's like, oh, Emma's down for a nap and I'm holding her. If I get up, she's going to wake up. And I'm like, that's okay, and it just kind of slid.
Yeah.
But we were still in couples counseling for a while and things were good. Like the boys were doing grief counseling. We were trying to talk about their dad as much as possible. At this point, we did find out that it was an accidental overdose. He had gotten a hold of some pills that had fentanyl in them and he did not know it. He never, ever would have taken them if he had known. Like they were Oxycontin that looked like regular Oxycontin, but they were actually cut with fentanyl. And so we told the boys that, just kind of explained to them what exactly had happened. And so, just trying to integrate this huge gap, this huge hole in our lives from that their dad had left, and also trying to figure out how we're going to make sure that Will is in a stable place where he can be that father for them. And he was doing well for a while.
And were the boys seeing their stepmom?
So, so we went to Great Wolf Lodge. I don't know if you know what that is. But it's like this. We went to Great Wolf Lodge. It was about 9 months after Ryan passed. We finally got it all together. They went and stayed with her for a couple weekends. Ryan's best friend, Bill, has kept them for a weekend, and his brother, John, took him to King's Dominion. So, everybody tries to kind of help out there. We didn't have the planned, every other weekend because she was reeling, from the loss.
Yeah, like she also lost a husband.
Yeah. I mean, the boys basically lost their family. They lost a stepmom and 2 sisters overnight in addition to their dad. Because that's something that could have continued. We didn't live close. I would have been open to them, continuing to stay there if they wanted to, but it was too much for her. 4 kids. And her ex-husband had the girls every other weekend. So it was just very complicated as, blended families and stuff is. But she's still a part of their lives and we do see them. Just not as much as I would like, but We're in touch.
And so Will, at this point, he's not working, but he's just trying to focus on getting better.
Yep. And looking for a job. And I was working. We're doing couples counseling. He's doing regular counseling. We're reading books, trying to figure out if we can get him into some kind of neurofeedback or, EMDR. We're looking at somatics, just anything. I had read a book called Complex PTSD by Pete Walker, and it's fascinating. I mean, Will was like, this is me. Like, this whole book is, I could have written it. He talks about like emotional flashbacks that basically shut you down where you can't function. Your mind is just like, you're not safe. And some people lash out. I mean, it's the fight, flight, freeze thing, and Will was a freezer, and he would just go to his room or go to our bed and just lay down and not wake up for a day or two. So it was a lot. It was a lot for me. The inconsistency of when he was going to be okay, when he wasn't, if he had taken too much of his medication again, if he was up for 3 days, because that was started happening again about 6 months after he got back from rehab. Because without that support system in place, you're just going to go to what works, even if it's not a great solution, it was working somewhat. So it was a struggle. Then when I lost my job in November, I was like, okay, shit is not good here. Like, this is really not good. I am now not able to provide. You're not working. He still wasn't in a place where he could. He'd actually gotten a job and was there for a month and a half, and then they let him go too because he couldn't make the meetings. He couldn't, do what they expected him to do. I'm like, okay, we need to stop doing this because the more hits you get, the worse you're going to feel about yourself. Let's just get you better. So then in January, he ended up getting sepsis somehow. I know he had a cut on his foot and it just never healed. And then he had this back pain that was, I'd never seen. His pain tolerance is very high. And he was just like rolling around on the floor. I'm like, this a couple of days, like, we gotta get you to the hospital. Like, this is crazy. So it turns out he had sepsis. They flew him up to Georgetown University Hospital outside DC. He had sepsis around his spine. So it was like masses on his spine. So they gave him this serious antibiotics, cleared it up. He ended up getting spinal surgery to pull out the mass. And then he also had one disc that needed to be replaced. We had like titanium screws in there. And it was serious. Like, he was in the ICU for 5 weeks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But during that time, they also had him on IV pain medication. Now, this is an addict he was a recovering heroin addict back in 2000 or something, a long time ago. He got clean and hadn't touched it since. But pain medication was always something that was like, he knew, if I take this, it makes me feel like a more normal person. But you can't get it regularly, unless you're in pain or unless you're getting it from the streets, and neither of which he was. But when he was on it at the hospital, he felt normal. He felt happy. He felt like, I can do things in life. And just kind of centered him and balanced him. So, but he was honest with them. He told them, I have a history of drug use. So when they're releasing him, they say, well, we can only give you 2 days worth. You have to find a pain management clinic. And I'm like, okay, so for 5 weeks, they have you on, it was Dilaudid. Like, this wasn't just,
it was like full-time.
Yeah, it was morphine, basically. And so then they release him with 2 days worth and tell him, good luck finding a place. So we ended up finding a place. But then she got word, I guess his medical records came from the hospital where it said he had prior history of drug use. So then they released him from care. So,
but like, he still had pain.
Yeah.
Just because
he had an open wound in his back. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he's at the ER, they're giving him medicine, 3 days worth, 4 days worth, but they can only do it so many times that he could not find another pain management clinic to take him. We were going to go up to Baltimore. The last day he was waiting on an ER prescription to be filled. And the pharmacist said, your insurance isn't going to pay for it. I can't fill it. And he just looked at me and he's like, babe, I'm done. Like, I can't keep fighting this. I am emotionally wrecked. I'm physically in pain. Nobody cares. Like, I'll tell you, I got his phone the other day. His last phone call was to his neurosurgeon. He spent that whole afternoon begging for help, begging. He spent 7 minutes on the phone trying to get a hold of his neurosurgeon, and I found him 10 minutes later, and he was gone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He fought so hard, and he was just, I remember, like, one of the last things we said was, I will never stop fighting for you, honey. And he's like, I love you more than I've ever loved anybody, but I can't keep ruining our lives. And I said, you're not ruining our lives. Like, we can find something. He's like, for what? That'll work for a little bit and then won't anymore. I know it'll work, and nobody wants to help me with it. Nobody wants to give me what I need. And I'm like, what do you say to that? Yeah, you're in so much physical pain, you don't think there's an end. Not to mention all the emotional agony that has been piled on for decades,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and when you're fighting so hard and you feel like nobody
cares.
is helping, nobody who can help is helping.
It's helping. Yeah, it's like they don't understand the situation or how dire it is,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he had tried. Yeah, he tried and tried. So, yeah, and it's unfortunate we're not the only ones. I did a lot of research after, and I found a number of people who ended their lives because they couldn't get their pain medication. Other people may say, oh, well, they're just an addict. Like, yeah, but they were on this medication from a doctor. And so it changes your brain. And so you can't just stop it. Like, you can't. It's unethical. I mean, it is, not to mention just the withdrawal, the physical withdrawals of what happens, but especially with somebody who struggles with addiction, it's just, it pushes them past the point where they can manage.
And so now, are you home with the kids when this happens?
So Liam was at his friend's house. Isaac was downstairs in his room. Carter and Emma are in the basement. We lived at a split level, so our bedroom is on one side of the house, and the kids are on the basement on the other side of the house. And we're making cookies, and I had heard him on the phone. I had come in with Emma behind me, and I saw he had the gun in his hand. It was like a 22. It was just a rifle. And I said, babe, put that away. Come on. I didn't think that he was actually going to do anything. And I couldn't go in to like actually do anything because our 3-year-old's behind me. So I sent them downstairs, and I come back in and try to get it out of his hand. I said, please just give it to me. He's on the phone still, talking to somebody. And he wouldn't give it to me. He was so strong. He's just a big guy. And I know he never would have done anything to me, but I'm like, what's the point of me wrestling? What if it goes off accidentally, because we're like having a tussle here. So I said, I will be right back. And I went outside and was like, okay, I got to get the kids out of the house and call for help here. We had a scare back in October where he was suicidal, and I called the cops, and they took all of our guns, and I didn't know that one was left. So I get the kids, they're in the kitchen at this point. So then I get them down in the basement. They're like on the other side of the house. I go back in, and he's gone. I mean, he looked like he was sleeping. Like, I was so confused because it looked like he had a bloody nose. I don't know if this is like too much detail, but I was just like, oh my gosh, what? He just looked like he was sleeping with blood coming out of his nose, but it wasn't like running. It just looked like he'd had a bloody nose. And I go and I lock the door behind me. I'm like, babe, what the hell? It's not a mess. It's not like you worry about somebody, come in after they kill themselves by suicide. And, it wasn't like that. I was so confused. And I was just like rubbing his arm, and, I moved his head, and then I got it. It just took me a couple minutes.
I think your brain doesn't want to register that.
Yeah. And especially because he just looked like he was sleeping. I mean, I don't know if he did research or something beforehand. I have no idea if I just am lucky in thankfully I get one piece of luck thrown my way, but I am thankful that when I think back to that day, there is not a lot of trauma associated with it. Of course, the trauma of losing him and stuff, but not the added trauma of graphic memories that I now have to purge or revisit in my dreams. So I got the kids out of the house. I'm on the phone with 911. I'm texting his sister. We just sit in the car, and the cops show up. And, once they had gone in and realized he was gone, they wouldn't let me back in the house. And so I'm just sitting outside. The kids are in the car, and it's cold, and it's like mid-March. I'm sitting out there without a jacket, just sitting on the side of the house, just staring straight ahead. I don't know what the hell is going on right now. And they kept saying, "Do you want a jacket? Do you want a jacket? Why don't you go into the car with the kids?" So I'm like, no, leave me alone. I'm sitting right here. Part of me wanted to be as close to his body as possible, because I was right on the corner where he was. But yeah, I mean, there was like so many ambulances and all that stuff. And so then Liam, I didn't actually tell him for a day or two. He was at his friend's and I put it off as long as I could. But yeah, telling your 3-year-old who was literally just playing with her dad that she was never going to see him again. It was, yeah. And Carter just kept asking, "What's going on, Mom? What's going on? Is Will okay? Is Will okay?" Because he had been at the hospital, right? So he had been gone for a couple weeks, like almost a month, or actually it was a little over a month. And so they were kind of used to him being either sick or gone at the hospital, but he was there. Like he had been there that day. We'd been making cookies and playing. And Carter says, "Will okay? Is Will okay?" "No, he's not okay." And I was like, "Baby, I'm sorry. He's gone. Like he died." And wow, was it his surgery? He was more emotional than I was, more in tune with his emotions. And so Carter, Liam, Isaac, even Emma knew that he had a hard childhood and that she was sad about it sometimes. A couple of days before it happened, Carter had come downstairs and Will was in the basement crying, and he just snuggled up to him and said, "What's wrong, Will?" And she told him, a little bit about what he was feeling and how, how it affects, how what had happened to him in the past affects him now. And so, yeah, it wasn't out of nowhere, right? It wasn't like, we're happy one minute and then he's gone. It was a very obvious lead up to it. Yeah. And then telling Liam, oh God, he came out of the house. I went over to his friend's house and said, "I need you to come outside." And he knew, he just was like, "No." And like, "I'm so sorry." He sees Carter and Emma sticking their heads out the window. So he knows they're okay. But he knew that something had gone wrong again.
And how old was he at this point?
So he's 11. So 6 and 9, and then 11 and 8.
So how do you even begin to heal and process what the last few years have been like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just like, do you have the answer? I was hoping that
I'd be like, "Oh, sorry, was I supposed to?"
I have taken the drink from a fire hose approach and just take in as much as possible and see what sticks. And so I read books, I listen to podcasts, I just am constantly absorbing, trying to find something that resonates with me. My first priority was getting us all into therapy. By the grace of God, that happened within 2 weeks of us moving. I don't know how, because it is damn near impossible to find therapists, much less child therapists, much less ones who take your Medicaid insurance, who have an opening, who your kids click with, all these things lined up. So the boys see the same one, and then Emma sees a different one. I'm doing EMDR therapy and somatic touch therapy. So I have 2 different practitioners I see. I've been doing, I wrote down my list of stuff. I'm looking into, I think we talked about like microdosing or like psilocybin, ketamine, kind of that aspect of it too. MDMA, just trying to figure out, can hallucinogens help heal some of this deep trauma? I mean, the obvious ones are recent, right? But what about the patterns that I have continued throughout my life? I'm looking into like past life hypnotherapy, that kind of thing. Is there anything there that I'm continuing these karmic patterns and can release that energy? I would say really my main focus is the kids, and me, but also I have a tendency to go big picture, like, okay, how can I turn this tragedy into something amazing? But and my therapist is like, "Don't do that. Like, you're trying to," it's like in internal family systems is a type of therapy that I really love. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like
A little bit.
we all have parts basically inside of us. So my managers, they're the ones that kind of keep you organized in your day rolling. There's firefighters, and they're kind of the crazy one. And then there's exiles. Those are the feelings and the parts that you don't want to show anybody. But anyway, my managers they're problematic. They're over functioning to a point where it's like, I can't not do stuff, So she's like, "Okay, is this your managers or is this yourself?" "Yeah, it's my managers. They don't want to feel the pain. They just want to get something done." So yeah, kind of digging into that has been, so stop looking big picture, focus on the here and the now and the present. even when it sucks. And I try to do meditations. Like I said, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I exclusively listened to a widow podcast in the beginning just to hear other people's stories and how the hell they went from like devastation to okay. Yeah. So it's just a bunch of stuff, essentially. I don't think there's any one thing that I'm like, yeah, that definitely worked. Yeah, there's things that definitely do work, but I think it's a combination of a lot of different supports, modalities, my increased awareness of things, asking for help, which I really hate doing, but it's not like I don't like being needy, but I kind of am. Like that's okay.
Yeah, like it's okay. Yeah, you should be. Yeah. Especially in this circumstance.
Yeah.
I think it's so admirable, and you should feel so proud that not only dealing with your own grief and trauma, but now, you're tasked with carrying the grief and trauma of 4 little people that really, also need help going through it. And you're actually like putting that at the forefront, like yours and their healing. And I think, like just from your own childhood, that is going to make such a difference in how they navigate life.
Yeah. I mean, there's conversation, even if I don't know the answers, and I'll tell them, if they ask me something, I don't know, here's what I think, let's look it up, or let's ask somebody. I mean, but a lot of times it's just a mess of feelings, and, I just try to be honest with them about where I'm at. If things are overwhelming for me, if I'm getting overstimulated because I'm feeling really triggered, I tell them, and I'm trying to tell them before I flip out and I get super angry, because, that's how I deal with grief sometimes. And they're becoming more aware of it too. Like, oh, I'm starting to get just doing a little head thing. Should everybody scatter?
Give her space.
Yeah. Or if I'm crying, they'll all come up and give me hugs, and they're sweet.
Oh my gosh. I'm so, so, so thankful that you've reached out and shared your story. I think, like, I say it to everybody, but even if you can't relate to the entire story, like there are so many pieces of your story that even like I can relate to. And I think it's so important that we have these conversations and talk about it, because I think it'll help a lot of people.
Yeah. Normalize grief and death and struggle and addiction and mental health problems. I mean, our story may be kind of a wild compilation of all of those things, but those things affect everybody. I just think that we're all going to be touched by grief at some point in our lives,
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I hope you found our conversation informative and entertaining. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to follow me on social media, share this podcast with your friends, and leave a review at ratethispodcast.com/I did not sign up for this. Your support means the world to me. If you want more interviews, exclusive content, and ad-free episodes, join the Patreon at patreon.com/I did not sign up for this. I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead, and we'll talk soon.
Hey there! Welcome to Seventh Heaven, a lesbian recap. I'm Lindsay, and I'm joined by my co-host and real-life partner, Carling. We're diving into the 90s hit drama through today's lens.
Get ready for our off-the-cuff commentary and peeling back the layers of the Camden family. We'll tackle everything from family rules, life lessons, and 90s fashion.
Join us every week for a lighthearted queer perspective and a trip down memory lane.
Whether you're a diehard fan or new to the show, this recap is for you.
So find us anywhere you get your podcasts at Seventh Heaven, a lesbian recap.